guys, it's Ariana. Welcome back to my channel. So if you hear wind, it's really windy right now and it's like hitting against my house and it's really loud, and I'm hoping my mic doesn't hear it, but it might pick it up. So if you hear random weird noises in the background, it's the wind. I have been away for about 2 weeks now because I was really sick for the last little while. So I haven't filmed because I didn't have a voice, but I am back now. I feel better now. So I'm ready to film. I also dyed my hair this kind of slate gray silver-ish color. So this is my actual hair and not a wig right now. So that's why my hair is different. I also have my wicked candle in here making the whole room smell like caramel apples, and I have my hot chocolate candle here. So I have a bunch of scary stories that I want to read and I'm really excited to read. So I don't really have anything else to ramble about, and I'm just going to jump on into the spooky stories. So the first one is from the spooky Cjades section. It's from the Reddit author Unicorn Lover Blue, and it's titled My Old Room. I've had a few things happen in this house. When I was 9, my little sister was born, so I had to move downstairs into the basement. That always gave me the creeps. My door frame was an odd shape, so it didn't have a door. My dad gave me some beads, like the 80s style beads, and my first night sleeping down there, I had my lamp on the corner of the room. My bed faced the door, so you could see into the mini living room, and I could see most of the stairs. I was half asleep, and I heard the laundry room door open and close. Confused because I didn't hear anyone come downstairs. I turned to look into the mini living room, and I see a person walk right next to the stairs, turn, and slowly go up them. The stairs creak with each step, and I thought it could have been my dad since it looked like a man, and I was half asleep. Then I fully fell asleep, and the next morning, I went upstairs, and I noticed the laundry room door was open. I closed it, and then I continued to go upstairs, and I asked my parents if they had gone downstairs last night, and they hadn't. Story number 2. This happened a few years after I had to move downstairs. I was around 12. I was sick and I had thrown up all over my bedroom floor, so I was sleeping on the couch in the living room. I had fallen asleep watching TV, and my dad yelled down the stairs at me at around 2 or 3 in the morning. He said, "Hey Alyssa, do you want this chocolate-covered peanut butter bar that's in the fridge?" I said, "What?" And then he repeated, and I said, maybe tomorrow, and that was the end of the conversation. I never left the couch. The next day, I asked him if he had asked me if I wanted the candy bar in the middle of the night, and he hadn't. Number 3. A few years after the candy bar experience, we got a dog. She stayed in the basement with me, and I potty trained her, fed her, basically took care of the dog. When she was finally potty trained, we put her kennel away so she could sleep with me. When she was 1, she was sleeping on my bed with me, and my lamp had burnt out during the middle of the night. I woke up to her staring in the darkness in the corner of my room, growling. My eyes were still adjusting, and I saw something standing there. I grabbed my flashlight next to my bed, turned it on, shined it right at the thing, but there was nothing there. I jumped up to turn my light on and grabbed my dog, and I went upstairs to my parents' room. They let me sleep in their bed with them. The next morning, the power in the whole house was out, and there hadn't been a storm at all the night before when I woke up. I have more stories of this house, but this is all for now. So they just have like really weird occurrences in their house. Those ones weren't really that scary, but definitely interesting. So thank you so much for allowing me to read your story, and I'm going to jump on over to the creepy encounters side of Reddit. So this is from the Reddit author I Have Entered the Chat, and it's titled Separated by an Unlocked Screen Door. When I was little, my mom always opened up the front screen door in the summer. It was something she always did as we lived in a rural, mostly safe area. It was old and never locked, almost never shut all the way, and the dog always escaped out of it. The room connected to this door was our middle room with the desktop computer in it. One day, as I was looking for art supplies in that room with the front door open to the screen, I remember I was looking for a few minutes and my mom was in the kitchen. I kept looking and I turned around to look elsewhere. There was a blurry, grisly looking man standing there. I had never seen him before. When I saw him, he just stayed put and stayed silent. No knock, no asking if my mother was home, no hello, just stood there. I ran to the kitchen and told my mom some guy was standing there. She walked out cautiously, and I heard her speak briefly through the screen door. Then she shut the front door and locked it. She never talked about it to me even when I asked questions. As an adult, she doesn't seem to remember what I remember so vividly at all. I still mull it over. Why was he there? Where was his car? Why would he be walking in a rural area with no sidewalks? Why was he silently watching me so closely in front of the door? How long was he there for? What was he planning? And why our house and not the neighbors? I don't know, but I'm glad I turned around when I did. Too long, didn't read. Creepy man silently watching me from right outside my locked unscreened door when my back was turned. Let's never meet again. So that one's just really creepy. And I know that's not a paranormal story, but I find that humans are almost more creepy than the paranormal because they just do weird things. And that is just a really weird fucking encounter. So I'm glad he didn't come into your house, and I'm glad nothing actually occurred from that, but that's still really freaking creepy. So the next one is from the True Scary Story section, and it's from the Reddit author the_friendly_fiend, and it's titled Finally Getting to Share This. So this one is slightly longer. So a much needed disclaimer first. English isn't my first language, as I'm Italian, so I apologize in advance for any grammatical horror I may end up giving to while writing this down. This happened in the summer of 2007. It was told to me by my two friends who experienced it. They were also a couple. This is important for later. It all happened in central Italy in Lazio, the region where Rome is, and I need to give some context about it. The area around Rome is full of hills. Most of that region is, and underneath many of those hills sit ancient Roman pre-Christian catacombs. So many, in fact, that they're not even that big of a deal to the locals, and some of these catacombs even got converted into wine cellars or basements over the centuries. Some haven't. Again, this is important for later. Now, these two girls, which we'll call E and C, were in their early 20s, have been together for a year or so back then, and given how ludicrously expensive rent is in Rome, they decided to try their luck finding a flat in one of the small towns around that area. All those hills I've mentioned, mind you, those hills aren't ominous at all. If you've ever seen pictures from the Tuscany, that's what they look like, which is rather lovely. They did find a small apartment for rent in one of those towns, a renovated flat on the second floor of a much older house, which isn't surprising at all in that region, as many houses are centuries old and just get renovated from time to time. On the ground floor of that apartment, there were some neighbors, but they never got to see much of them. A couple of apartments with old people living in them. There was also a very old, sturdy wooden door, which was always closed and locked by a padlock. And when they asked the landlord where it led to, he told them that it was some door to some old cellar nobody really used anymore, and supposedly was connected to one of the catacombs I've mentioned earlier. Again, it's an ancient country, and such things don't come across as particularly weird to us. Neither to E or C, who just shrugged it off and said, okay, makes sense. So E and C spent a few months in that town, not really bonding with anyone, mainly communicating from here to Rome and back to work. However, being a couple in an old town full of old and bigoted people, they were quickly starting to notice how unwelcome they really were. They'd go to the local store to buy food, and the clerk would ignore them on purpose. They'd find their mailbox emptied and all of their mail scattered all over the floor outside their apartment. They'd even bump into people riding scooters around town, passing them, calling them horrible things. In short, they didn't have the best time there, but they knew it was only a temporary solution, so they decided to just endure it for a little while, waiting to move again. And yes, FYI, Italy is still majorly conservative and the topic of the LGBTQ, even more so than now 16 years ago. One morning, as she was stepping outside to go to the car and drive to Rome, E found something on the ground right in front of their flat's door. A mussel shell that had been placed there, a doused red candle on it, and judging by the mass it made and how short the candle was by now, it had been burning for a whole night. Not knowing what to do with it, she picked up the shell with the candle and threw it in the garbage. Together with the wax, she could scoop it up from the floor. Another thing she noticed when she finally set out to leave was that the door that was sturdy and was always guarded with a padlock downstairs wasn't locked anymore. The padlock was gone and it just opened by a crack. She didn't really pay much attention to it just right then and there. But then, things started happening. At first, it was an uneasy feeling. E and C would be in their living room, sitting on the couch, reading, chatting, watching a movie, and suddenly they just had this feeling like someone was watching them. Later on, it became more than that. They'd hear noises around the house, like someone knocking on the walls in other rooms, or the toilet flushing on its own, water taps turning on by themselves in the kitchen, and it became less than bearable. One night, as they were sleeping, they both woke up in the middle of the night, hearing the footsteps of bare feet in their living room. They started listening, and it felt like footsteps were simply pacing around, and there was nothing else. No voices, no items being moved, just the sound of bare feet in their living room. After a while, C, feeling understandably scared, whispered, "What's that?" And as she did, the footsteps stopped, as if noticing her voice in the silence of the apartment. They stopped, and a split second later, they started sprinting towards their bedroom. E grabbed C and turned her face away from the door, doing so herself just moments before the footsteps came through their bedroom's door and stopped on the side of the bed. She told her not to look, whatever happens, don't look, and held her in her arms for the rest of the night. Neither of them sleeping, just listening in for those footsteps to finally leave, or whatever it was to do something, anything at all. But nothing happened. They spent the next 3 hours wide awake in silence until dawn came, and with that bit of sunlight finally shining through, E found the courage to turn around, and nothing was there. Another night, E, who was in a university at the time, was up late studying in the living room while C was sleeping. Like I said before, it was summer, and the windows in the living room was open. She wasn't facing it, the window was to her left, and she was sitting at the table taking notes, when suddenly, she felt the hair on the back of her head stand, and had that familiar feeling of being watched. So she just instinctively turns to the window. She described what she saw was a completely pitch black human-like figure perched on the windowsill, with no features on its face, other than two very large orange glowing eyes, who just stood there motionless and stared at her. She couldn't tell me how long it stared at her. She just told me she felt completely paralyzed and helpless. She had a feeling that she had tried to move or do anything, that thing would have lunged at her. Eventually, she couldn't hold on to it anymore, turned around and closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and when she looked back, it was gone. After that, they contacted their landlord and decided to leave for good. They did so within a week since that event. The last thing E noticed as they were finishing packing their things up and leaving was that the big wooden door, the one that had been left open ever since all of the weird events had begun, was now back to being closed and shut with a padlock. I hope you enjoyed. It's been 14 years since I was told all of this, and ever since then, I've never shared outside of the conversations with a few trusted friends. I had been meaning to write it down and eventually, but never got around to it. And no, sadly, I don't know the name of the town where this all happened. I'm not in touch with these two anymore, so I couldn't find out even if I wanted to. But knowing myself and what a massive dumbass I can be, I don't much mind not knowing, because I know I'd be tempted to go and take a look on my own. And that doesn't sound like it would lead anywhere constructive. So I did put a trigger warning at the beginning of that story. So there was mention of bigotry towards the couple in Rome, and I'm really sorry that they experienced that. That's really terrible, and they were just treated so poorly. And I did want to just put a trigger warning in just in case anyone that is watching this video is sensitive to that topic and maybe just wants to skip over that portion of this video. So I definitely put a disclaimer in there, and that is really creepy that happened and really sad. I feel so bad for them that they were treated so poorly in Rome, and then just the added creepiness of that door being opened and then all of that weird stuff that started happening after that door started opening. I'm wondering if there was like somebody in the catacombs that had access into their house. Like, that's so fucking creepy. The part of the story though where something was like perched on the windowsill and it had like yellow eyes and it was staring at her, and then when she looked away and looked back, it was gone. It's just so fucking creepy. That's definitely paranormal to me. But the other portion of the video kind of makes me think that like somebody was in the catacombs, like basement part of their house, and had access into their house because that door was now open, and that's just fucking creepy. It's also really weird that the second that they decided to move, the door was now locked. So I fucking hate that. That's so creepy. Thank you so much for allowing me to read your story. Your story was really creepy, and I feel so bad for that couple that it was just a lot of shitty things happening one after another. So the next one that I want to read is from the no sleep section. So this one is a fictional story, I believe, and it's from the Reddit author Light in the Dungeon, and it's titled Dollhouse. The people in this town aren't real. I don't mean that there's a bunch of mannequins, all Nuketown style. I mean, they're just wrong. Everyone wears plain clothing, no brands, no words, not even pictures. Whenever they speak, it's only what needs to be said. Prices for groceries, gas, and rarely anything else. I once got bumped into while walking back to my apartment, but they didn't even say sorry or excuse me. Originally, I just brushed it off as them being an asshole, but the more I paid attention, the more things didn't seem right. I moved here 2 months ago due to a natural disaster in my town. My entire block was leveled, and I decided that it was time for a change in scenery. About a week and a half after I moved here, however, the only bridge to exit the small island had collapsed. At first, I didn't mind because I didn't really see any reason to go back to the big city, but now I feel trapped. I've tried to talk to the people here from time to time, but only have ever met with curt responses or blank stares. I tried to ignore it because I assumed they just didn't like non-locals. The people, however, were not the only thing off about the town. There was no emergency service buildings, bar, or single hospital. There was only one grocery store and a handful of gas stations, even though there weren't even that many cars to begin with. After I decided to look closer, I noticed a couple of things. One day, while I was getting groceries for the week, I decided to peek at what the person in front of me was buying. I've never been particularly nosy, but sometimes you just can't help yourself. What she had on the conveyor belt didn't make any sense. Bleach, cat litter, baking soda, shampoo, and one apple. At first glance, it just looked like anyone's normal groceries, but none of them belonged together, without at least some other miscellaneous to make it seem like you're actually shopping and not just grabbing things to make the flow of life seem convincing. I would have almost brushed it off as if it wasn't for one thing. The apple was rotting. This would seem all of the less strange if you would attempt to apply some logic to the situation. Maybe she couldn't find everything she was looking for. Maybe the produce section was just desolate today. But here's the thing. I've never seen a single shipment to the store. The shelves are always fully stocked every time I go in. There's not even anyone else in the store except for a few customers and a single cashier. There's no evidence that anyone has even bought anything except for the people waiting in line to check out. I only realized just how strange of a situation I was in when I saw how they acted when they thought they weren't being observed. In the rare circumstances that multiple people were at the single spotlight they were, all of their faces were completely vacant of all emotion and expression, as if they were stamped onto an action figure. They all looked forward, completely motionless, and I could swear not a single one of them blinked. Yet when the light turned green, all 5 cars moved in unison, without hesitation. Once again, at a glance, this looks like a completely normal action. Green means go, right? But when you stop to think, you would usually only start going once you see the person in front of you move. They did not. I've been doing a lot of stopping and thinking recently. I don't know when I decided to follow someone home, but I picked a random person and just kept walking behind them. They walked for hours with seemingly no direction. I left here, right over there, until the sun had finally sunken under the horizon, and they decided that it was time to go inside. Now I don't mean they walked home. That would be too simple. No, instead, they just picked the closest house and went inside. I watched tentatively from the window to see what he would do. Check the fridge, watch TV, maybe just sit on the couch and start reading a book. But what he did was far more unsettling. He just walked into the bedroom, laid on the bed face up, fully flat, without even removing as much of his shoes and jacket, and closed his eyes. On the walk back to my house, I felt shaken. Everything about what I had just witnessed felt so wrong on an instinctual level, and I couldn't stop my skin from crawling. When I finally reached my house and invited my bed, I collapsed onto it, exhausted from hours of walking. Even though I was completely spent, I couldn't fall asleep. I stared at my ceiling and walls for hours, just trying to pass out, but I couldn't. I started to feel just as unreal as the inhabitants of this alien island. Eventually, in the late hours of the morning, I fell asleep. I woke up to the sound of knocking at my door, which was terrifying for more than a couple of reasons. I cautiously opened the door to see a mailman with absolutely zero notable features. Without a word, he handed me a letter and left. When I opened it, there were only 4 words on the sheet of paper. They were very clear and housed an implied threat: mind your own business. Obviously, there was no return address. The next few days were notably different from the rest of time I have spent there. Had I not spent the last several weeks heavily observing the population around me, I don't think I would have noticed. But people looked at me. They acknowledged my presence. I have never felt so naked before in my life. As time went on, it got worse. So much worse. This town full of people that just pretended to be alive had started to live around me, but only during the day. At night, it was still so empty, you could mistake it for a model. I constantly would drive up to the collapsed bridge in hopes that it would magically be fixed, or at the very least under construction. No such luck. I tried to pretend it was fine for so long until eventually one followed me home. He just stood outside my window even after nightfall. Eventually, he left, but I still couldn't shake the feeling of imminent danger. They all watch me now, waiting for something, so I've begun to blend in. I keep my face blank, I grab things at random when I go to the store, and at night, I make sure to get home as quickly and as inconspicuous as possible. No one looks anymore, but I can still feel their eyes burning behind me. I am trapped here, and they all know it. And that's the end of the story. That one was really freaking well written and really creepy. I hate that so much. Just the idea of being trapped on like an island and like no way off is terrifying. I'm wondering if like that's a really big bridge and you can't just like swim across the water or something, or walk across the water. I don't know. That one's really fucking creepy and I really liked that one. But that is where I'm going to end the creepy stories, because I am starting to feel like the congestion in my chest go up to my throat, and it's making me have to like stop and start so much in the reading of these stories that it's kind of annoying, and it's probably not all flowing together super well, so editing is going to be a pain in the ass. So this is where I'm going to end the video here, because I still kind of feel crappy and it is what it is. But I'm hoping that I can come back on here tomorrow and read some more stories, because I have a lot of stories saved on my phone and I want to get to them. I just haven't been feeling the best. So sorry that I took so much time off. I feel like I'm always apologizing to you guys, saying like, sorry I've been gone for 2 weeks, but shit happens. So I do apologize for that. But thank you so much for watching this video. If you guys did make it to the end of the video, please leave your favorite fall emoji, because we are finally in fall weather. It is windy as fuck outside, as I said. So it is finally starting to feel like fall in Canada. So thank God, I'm so over summer. But thank you so much for watching this video. If you guys did enjoy this video, please make sure to give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below for more content like this, and I will see you guys at the next video. Bye.